First day of NFL free agency in the books. Bears made some moves, didn't make others. There were some surprising twists and turns, and we got to take an overall look at just where things stand for a team that's kind of in transition right now. We got a live edition of Hoge Jahns coming up right now to discuss each and every move. Let's go. What up? Welcome in a big edition of Hoge and Jahns, presented by Old National Bank. Every play matters, whether it's on the field or in your financial life. The best teams win by delivering excellence at every level. Old National Bank, where relationships and results matter. Remember FDIC, and that's exactly what the Bears are trying to do. Win at every level, their offense and defense, while navigating tight situation on the salary cap. Johnsy, good morning.
Good morning. We are recording this on the morning of day 2 of the legal tampering window. It's the most ridiculous name of all things in sports, especially in the NFL. This is day 2.
Well, that's because it's not a real name.
No,
it's not actually what it's called. It's the free agent negotiating window. It's completely legal.
Legal
tampering. It's not tampering. Tampering's what's been going on for the last 2 months since the season ended.
Yeah. One might say the entire combine is a tampering convention.
Yes, it's the tampering convention. That's what that should be called.
There we go.
This is just the legal negotiating window, which kicked off officially 23 hours ago as we were live on YouTube right now. And deals are agreed upon. Of course, what is important is that none of it is actually official until 3 p.m. Central Time tomorrow on Wednesday. That is the official start of the league year. That is when all these trades you've heard about become official. That's when these contracts can actually be signed. So technically, all the moves we talk about today, they could change. Someone could change their mind. It happens. Not a lot. Maybe like one a year across the league. Somebody decides to change their mind over the next couple of days. Maybe they
how could we ever forget Larry Ogunjobi? That story with Chicago Bears. Ryan Poles' first big free agent signing.
Right, because these guys still got to come in and do their physicals in the building once they get there. And, the team's not going to execute a contract on a player until that is done. But, of course, it's not like you're going to cheat those physicals. So from that standpoint, these agents need to be upfront about what their clients are dealing with physically and all that. It's a lot. No question about it. But we appreciate everybody being here as we are live. If you're watching us on YouTube, please contribute in the chat. Hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to our channel, it's a great place to be. So hit subscribe because we're bringing you 2 episodes a week throughout the offseason and 3 a week once we get into the season with actual games. You can also become a CHGO diehard by using code Jahns when you sign up, JAHNS. You'll get a great $36 diehard offer. We're going to have a bunch of free agent content for you there that will be diehard only. Our instant reactions to all the moves yesterday, it's our free agency tracker that's actually unlocked for everybody. So if you just want a sample of what you can get over at allchgo.com, you can check that out right now. Johns is also, I'm going to say, begging me to bring back 10 Bears things.
Yes.
So
begging. I asked.
Strongly convincing me that it is the right move. And I agree.
Do it.
So if you're signed up to be a diehard, you can get that too, as well as Fran Duffy's entire draft guide, which alone is worth probably double than what you're paying. Write-ups on every single prospect. So there's plenty of reasons to be there.
I imagine there's updates going into there literally as we're talking right now.
100%.
It's a living document.
And as free agency changes teams' needs and wants, that's part of why we are here to talk about what the Bears did and did not do on day one in free agency. Of course, everything's fluid by the time you listen to this. If you're listening to this later as a podcast, maybe there's more moves, maybe there's updates. We're going to mostly just react to what happened on Monday, talk about the new players that we are 99.9% sure are going to be on this team. Added, some that came back as well. Johnsy, where do you want to start?
Let's run down the three new additions on defense and then maybe go through them one by one. I'll give you the name and the numbers on their new contracts, and then let's talk about it. So defensive tackle Neville Gallimore was the first signing. 2 years, $12 million, $5 million guaranteed, $3 million signing bonus, $2 million base salary in 2026. So that sounds like a 1-year deal in a sense. Safety Coby Bryant, my favorite signing. 3 years, $40 million, $25.75 guaranteed, $12 million signing bonus. His salary in 2026 is only $1.5 million. In 2027, it jumps up to $12.25 million. That is guaranteed, and it's full of bonuses. Linebacker Devin Bush, 3 years, $30 million, $20 million guaranteed. We don't have more details on his contract because I believe it has not been filed yet with the NFLPA.
Yeah. So can we start with Coby Bryant? I feel like that's the biggest signing.
Let's go. Yeah.
That the Bears have made. It's also, not official. It does seem to point to very strong possibility that Kevin Byard will not return, which I know is something that surprises us. It seemed like both sides were, including Kevin, who we talked to at the Super Bowl in San Francisco not too long ago, seemed like both sides were very interested in get back together. Things change though. You didn't necessarily know who was going to be available, like your full board of free agents. I think when you look at Coby Bryant, you see a player who's a really good fit. Now I think there will be a little bit of a scheme adjustment here, not in terms of things he can and cannot do, but just things he wasn't really doing a ton of. Because the Bears are going to play a little bit more man than the Seattle Seahawks with a lot of too high safety. But, I like Coby Bryant because I think he can cover. I think he's, we could talk about the positives with Kevin Byard in a second, but we're talking about a player that's younger, probably step faster, can play center field the same way as Kevin Byard. Now, he doesn't quite have the same ball production, but he has quite a bit of ball production. This isn't like a guy who lacks in ball production. In fact, he seems to have a knack of getting his hands on the football quite frequently. Just didn't lead the league in interceptions like Kevin Byard did last year. Also, Johns, I really like his ability to blitz. He can do that too. So you talk about some man looks where you can send him on blitzes. We saw Dennis Allen try to dial those up last year. Probably maybe didn't do it as much as he maybe wanted to because he didn't have Kyler Gordon, didn't have Jalen Johnson for a lot of the season. But I think this is just a young, exciting player, and you're not paying an insane amount of money for him. I think this is probably more than they were going to pay Kevin Byard, though. So they are investing a little bit more in the position to get a little bit younger and maybe a little bit more exotic in some of the things that they can do in Dennis Allen's defense.
What I love about this is that the Bears have a young ascending player who has only played his position 2 years. Things clicked in Seattle under Mike McDonald, but he was drafted as a cornerback. One of the things I thought of last night while I'm doing my research, I'm like, how many times have we had conversations about Bears cornerbacks? Maybe Charles Tillman later in his career, maybe he could play safety. Maybe Tyreek Stevenson, can he try safety? Terrell Smith, can he try safety?
Came up with Kyle Fuller too.
Kyle Fuller came up so many times. But here we are with a real example of a cornerback converting to safety where it's a home run position switch, where he becomes a key contributor in a secondary that helped win a Super Bowl. I like his versatility. He can play free safety or strong safety. He is violent in run support. The ball production is good. This is from Next Gen Stats. Let me pull it up quickly. Coby Bryant allowed the second lowest pass rating among safeties in 2025, minimum 25 targets in coverage. His 4 interceptions were tied for the 4th most at his position. So the Bears are getting a darn good football player.
Yeah, Matt Bowen, who of course we had on a couple weeks ago to preview free agency, he wrote on Twitter, positive move for the Bears. Bryant fits both safety spots in Dennis Allen's defense. Ball production, 7 interceptions over the last 2 seasons. Field vision from the deep half post. Top down burst. Urgency on the edges in run support. That's another thing I should have mentioned because positive reviews on his ability to stop the run too. So, yeah,
I think like you put his name into just a simple search into X, and I think it's a good thing when you come up with a lot of baldy breakdowns. And he is highlighting what Coby Bryant was doing at this point for the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be interesting, though. They still have another safety spot open. And I guess theoretically, could be Kevin Byard. It could be Jaquan Brisker. These guys are not signed elsewhere. Or perhaps most likely a draft pick. But I'm interested to see how this goes because I think there's a world in which Kevin Byard could fit with Coby Bryant.
Absolutely.
I think there's a world where Jaquan Brisker can fit.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of safeties in this draft too. I think the problem becomes you're kind of running out of cap space in the sense of you have been able to make these moves so far without moving too much money around, and having to borrow from future years. Now they have plenty of options if they need to go down that route, whether it's extending some players like a Cole Kmet or just restructuring some contracts. They got plenty of opportunities to do that if they need to do so. I think one of the positive things about the first day of free agency, Johns, is they were able to make these additions, even bring some guys back. Now I know the numbers are really, really close. They continue to be fluid. How these contracts are structured and all of that will affect, but they seem to be straddling that line right now with the top 51. For those that don't know, by the start of the league year on Wednesday, 3 p.m., the top 51 contracts count against your salary cap. You need to be under the cap with your top 51. Now, again, that continues to be fluid. There's ways to manipulate that. And you still got a lot of guys you got to sign, a lot of guys you got to re-sign. There's a ton of expiring contracts still out there. So they're going to have, plus a draft class and all the money that goes into the draft class that you have to fit in. So the Bears are going to have to move some money around anyway. But watching the market, trying to understand what it is for Kevin Byard here now going into day 2 of free agency, I have maybe a small hunch here that Byard might be caught off guard by this a little bit, that they went in this route, maybe his market not being what he maybe thought it might be going into this offseason after putting up the production he did last season. And a lot of guys right now, I think including Trey Hendrickson, probably adjusting to what the reality of their market might actually be here on day 2.
Yeah, the dust is settling. And as good as they are, including Hendrickson, Byard, this is what happens when you're in your 30s and you're looking for that 3rd or 4th contract at this point in your career. Both outstanding football players, both should be contributors for contending teams, but this is the hard truth of the NFL. The Bears have to sign a safety. They have to sign a couple safeties. Their roster construction literally demands it before you enter the drafts. And I like the safety class, especially late on day 2, early day 3. There's some great options for the Bears to consider. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. They have to add at the position just because it demands it where they are. There's 3 safeties under contract? 2? Like 2 right guys now? We don't know. 2 guys we don't really know who they are, and Coby Bryant.
Yeah. Well, and look, Jonathan Owens, Elijah Hicks, those are guys that I think they would love to bring back for special teams for depth. I think they probably definitely want to bring Hicks back, but You know, Hicks sometimes reminds me a little bit of Devin Bush, who ultimately got an opportunity to start elsewhere. And if you're going to get that opportunity, you usually probably are going to take it. So again, I think the Bears are probably trying to figure out what that market is and if they can bring him back cheap. Should we move on to Devin Bush?
Yes. I like this move too. Like I like it a lot. They don't have a young ascending player, but I would describe Devin Bush's situation as an uber talented player, a former first round pick who's almost resetting his career and getting going again after a serious injury in 2020. Tore his ACL, wasn't the explosive player everybody thought he would be, getting drafted out of Michigan by the Pittsburgh Steelers. But here he is having 2 pretty good years with the Browns, just had his best year of his career, and he's still only 27 years old.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be an interesting one because, and I said this yesterday on CHGO, like whenever Devin Bush's career is over, and hopefully it's not, hopefully he's got a lot of time left because he's still 27. It wouldn't completely shock me if you look back and say, oh, that 2025 year with the Cleveland Browns was the best year of his career. And he got rewarded for it with the nice, little contract from the Chicago Bears. On the other hand, you're always trying to bet with upside on some of these things. And I think the way you just laid that out, I think the way we've adjusted to ACL injuries in the world of football and really sports in general, I know when we were younger, when we were kids, like those were very serious injuries. Like when somebody tore their ACL, you were like, oh no, are they ever going to come back? Nowadays, it's like, patch it up. They'll be back in 6 months. And then there's just an expectation that they're going to recover and be fine. I think in reality, when you actually look at, yes, they're coming back sooner, but in many, many, many cases, it takes a year, sometimes even 2, to return back to the form that you were at before you suffered that knee injury. And not all these knee injuries are the same. Some of them have, multiple knee ligaments. Some of them are just a clean ACL tear. That's a little bit easier to come from. I don't know all the specifics on Devin Bush's situation. What I do know is that after that injury occurred, he certainly did not seem to be the same player. And then, they move on from him. He gets a couple other opportunities, including the last couple of years in Cleveland. And last year, he looked like that top 10 pick he was supposed to be. He looked fast, 125 tackles. Certainly looked faster than what Tremaine Edmonds was giving you. And so I like this signing. He was somebody we talked a lot about leading up to free agency. 3 years, $30 million. Not all that's guaranteed, obviously. So you're talking about being able to bring back to Marco Jackson, who I think also has speed. We've talked about him a lot, and add Devin Bush at a total price lower than what you would have had to have paid Tremaine Edmonds in 2026.
So again, you plug his name into the X machine, and one of the first clips that come up is Devin Bush back at Michigan pregame, going at it with Michigan State in the middle of the field, digging his cleats into the middle of the Michigan State logo. Do you remember what Dennis Allen said about the signing of C.J. Gardner-Johnson and his play style, and how he wanted some of that abrasiveness, how he wanted some of that nasty? Devin Bush brings some of that. Another clip was just from last year. Devin Bush in the face of Aaron Rodgers, talking trash to him after some successful plays by the Cleveland Browns. You got to love that. You need that. You need that type of energy. You need that type of nasty on defense. I think this defense needs some of that energy. And Devin Bush and Coby Bryant both provide some of that.
I think the key to this linebacker room, and, we got more time to talk about this, obviously, leading up to training camp, but, TJ, I like the state of these linebackers right now if TJ Edwards is healthy. Now, that's a big if, because from what I understand, he should be back. I don't know, probably maybe not full go, but should be available for training camp. It's kind of the timeline, on that broken leg, ankle situation. My concern, though, Johns, was he dealt with like a full season of soft tissue injuries. That if you took out the injury at the end of the season, and maybe they're all connected, right? Because sometimes things, lead to
He
other
starts
things.
breaking down.
Well, and that's what I'm worried about. I thought he was already due to go into an offseason where he was going to have to vigorously attack whatever's causing these soft tissue injuries, right? Whatever goes into it, nutrition, training, stretching, changing the way that you spend your off. I have no idea, but like if I'm that player, that's what I'm looking at, right? Well, then you add a very, very, very significant injury that impacts all of that, impacts you having a fully healthy offseason where you can do all those things. That is my concern just in general. TJ Edwards staying healthy in 2026. If he can, though, I think they're going to be a faster unit. I like Edwards in the middle as the green dot, Mike linebacker, Devin Bush on the weak side. DeMarco Jackson's in a great role. I know the role the Bears really want him in, where he can play Sam. He can get on the field on defense, but he doesn't have to be out there, more than a third of the game. And then he can contribute on special teams too and bring that speed to both of those elements. Like that is a good spot for the Bears linebacker room right now as they move on from Tremaine Edmunds. But it does come with that pretty significant caveat of TJ Edwards needs to stay healthy. And if he can't, the question becomes, what can Ruben Hippolyte give you in year 2 after year 1 for him between injuries and just not really being able to contribute too much? Year 1 was kind of a wash.
It does strike me as a position with the investment in Bush, with the investment in TJ Edwards. He got his extension last year, and DeMarco Jackson getting his new deal. And I know the Bears just selected Ruben Hippolyte last year. I would still imagine that taking a linebacker at some point in this draft, a pretty good draft class for linebackers, especially day 2, early day 3, is on the table for the Chicago Bears. Can you trust Ruben Hippolyte? I think the Bears are still higher on him than maybe outsiders are looking in, but this feels, I would almost expect a linebacker to be considered at some point come draft.
All right, should we move on to the defensive tackle?
Couple more thoughts.
Okay.
Just on Devin Bush. His father played in the NFL. He had a decorated college career at Michigan, just like Coby Bryant did. I kind of like that he's a former Steelers draft pick. I know it's never a good thing to be picking up the scraps of organizations like the Ravens and the Steelers, but at the same time, like as we laid out, a lot of things kind of happened that led to Devin Bush's exit in Pittsburgh. I think the Bears might have a very motivated player here, a player who had a high draft selection, who's motivated and probably showing that he should have been drafted that high and should be considered one of the better linebackers in the NFL.
I think one thing that we're going to have to track, and we probably won't really know this until the games start and we're in the season, is, you're moving on from, let's assume they're moving on from Kevin Byard for a second. We know they're moving on from Tremaine Edmunds because he went to the Giants, already signed, agreed to a contract there. What are you losing from a leadership, almost like nostalgia standpoint of what last season was? What 2020, like 2025 was a special season. A lot of those things, I'm even thinking about Tremaine Edmunds, and it's like, it's Chicago, like a lot of those things that really led to the special year. This is the reality of the NFL, man. You gotta stay ahead of the game. It's one of the reasons why it's such a great league is because of the salary cap, because of the way teams need to reload and manage these things and make tough decisions this time of year. And I don't think you can fault the Bears at all for trying to go younger and faster. They badly need to do that because the counter argument to what I'm bringing up here is that, man, at the end of the year, they just looked a step slow on defense. And they acknowledged that at the combine and said this was going to be a big focus for them. So I'm not trying to question that these aren't the right moves. I think they are. But I do wonder, new guys come in, what carries over from 2025 from that standpoint? I just think that's something we're going to have in our back pocket that we're going to have to kind of track as the season goes on.
You used an interesting word there, nostalgia. We talked a lot on the CH show yesterday about the void of leadership at least the way it looks right now for the Bears roster with Edmonds gone, Dahlman gone, with Kevin Byard not signed. And at this point, 10:30 on Tuesday, I'm not ruling out the return of Kevin Byard or Jaquan Brisker, who would both help fill that void. But at the same time, like I almost feel like this fits the messaging of what Ben Johnson kind of wants. Like we have to move on. This year's going to be different. Like the more I thought about it as the day went on yesterday, I'm like, this kind of fits. This is the hard reality of the NFL, and he wants this team to reset and move on to 2026. This is part of it. I think Devin Bush brings some leadership capabilities. I would argue that Coby Bryant, after winning the Super Bowl, brings some of that too. Like there's something of immense value in that. We heard it before with Danny Trevathan. There's a new edge, a new swagger that comes with it. And Coby Bryant should provide it. You look at his scouting report when he was getting drafted out of Cincinnati. Leadership is one of the things that those scouting reports mention. So I think these new players could help fill that void and bring the Bears forward the way Ben Johnson wants them to get over what happened in 2025 as exciting and as memorable as it was.
All right. Neville Gallimore, defensive tackle. 2 years, $12 million, $5 million guaranteed. You read these numbers off earlier.
To one
another
year.
way. Yeah. And I was going to say, we're going to talk about Braxton Jones here after the break, but this deal actually isn't much different than the deal they gave Braxton Jones, except for they could control him for 2 years. But in terms of what it is at its base, 1 year, $5 million guaranteed. Just trying to put that in perspective for follow the money, what the player is, what the expectations are here. I know it's been kind of thrown out there as an Andrew Billings replacement. I think in some ways it probably is.
Chris Williams?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think this is more of a Chris Williams upgrade in my opinion. More of the, guy who can probably play multiple spots, but he's actually, you look at his snap counts, he's been more of a 3 technique. Not a ton of money, probably, a little bit more upside here. Did give the Colts 3.5 sacks last season. So look, they're not done at defensive tackle. I circle this as a position that could certainly be what they address at 25 overall. Still with this move. So, this seems like just a solid rotational guy who, same thing, gets you a little bit younger, maybe slightly better on the interior, but they still have a lot of work to do up and down the defensive line.
If I'm the Bears, I'm excited about the possibility that the defensive line market, I'm talking pass rushers and defensive tackles, can return to our favor just in terms of negotiations, that it settles in an area where you're willing to sign more depth. Maybe someone with some name power too. I'm not saying Trey Hendrickson, but maybe I'm just throwing names out there, like Bradley Chubb, Cam Jordan, someone who could give you a little bit in the pass rush. You always need depth. You need rotation. At this point, I think Hendrickson is the one true headliner in the defensive line right now. But if you could add depth at a reasonable price that gives you some pass rush, production, I think you're excited about that if you're the Chicago Bears.
I think one thing you're seeing too, like if you just look at Billings is 31 years old now, right? Like, Byard, like they're looking at these guys that are older and they're like, look, we're just gonna get younger. We're gonna do the smart thing here at these spots. Now, I'm not saying that any of those guys can't come back, but it's gonna have to be at a much more reasonable price. If they're gonna go, and maybe that's, but I'm just trying to follow that here in, talking about a guy like Cam Jordan or talking about a guy like Trey Hendrickson, both who have ties to Dennis Allen. Yeah, they're also a lot older though. So I'm not saying they're not going to go down that road, but if they do, I think it's going to be at a much more reasonable price, because if you're following what the Bears are doing so far, the theme is younger, faster.
And the other prevailing theme in all this, Adam, is that everything is almost happening within this 2-year window that exists when it comes to Caleb Williams' next contract. You pointed it out yesterday, and it is so true. I know there's a couple 3-year deals on the books, but if you look at the details, I imagine there's outs in those contracts. And not saying the Bears will take them, but this is usually how it works in the NFL, especially when it comes to the final years on these deals. But everything, like the Bears are still functioning and operating within this 2-year window. And I know 3-year deals have become the theme around the league for a couple of years now, but the execution of this plan is staying within that 2-year window provided by Caleb Williams' contract.
Yes, and maintaining that future flexibility is key, because right now you're seeing in this offseason right now they don't necessarily have that, at least as much as they have had in the past. Again, they can kind of create that flexibility by borrowing from the future, but as much as they can go younger, faster, without having to mortgage that future when it comes to big paydays for Darnell Wright and Caleb Williams coming up and more beyond that, because like you look at what Colson Loveland just did as a rookie, you got to start penciling that in at the top of the tight end market here, 2 years down the road.
And
as
Darnell
well.
Wright's due. Like the next big contract, the next 5-year deal coming for the Chicago Bears is going to be your right tackle.
Exactly. All right, we're going to take a quick time out here. We'll come back and we'll talk about some of the guys that the Bears brought back, what could be next. There were some crazy moves across the league too, especially at center. They're kind of reset the whole center market. So all that is coming up next. But first, Katie, just let us know when that break is actually ready to roll. In the meantime, we'll just keep moving here. Were you surprised, Johns, that Braxton Jones was not only re-signed, but re-signed so quickly?
Re-signed so quickly? No. I think, well, we kind of learned this at the Combine, that this was squarely on the table for the Chicago Bears. I think maybe the Bears just have more optimism than all of us looking at Ozzie Trapillo's situation, where they're not writing him off as serious as this injury is and as how long as it could take. And maybe they're more confident in what the competition of Braxton Jones, Theo Benedict, and Karan Amagaji, who they're not done with, who they're not writing off by any means, can produce in 2026.
Yeah, I think this is one of the more, I think I'd even use the word a little confusing situations for the Bears this offseason. And I saw some tweets and some messages from fans, which I totally understood yesterday. When you take a look at the idea of you are telling your fan base that you're going to essentially run it back with a competition last year that didn't exactly go as planned. You sort of settled on Braxton Jones as your starter. He was banged up. He didn't play that well the first couple weeks. You end up benching him in the middle of that Raiders game. And then the guy who ends up emerging as your left tackle through all of it was the guy that you basically gave up on at the position during the competition back in August and decided he's not ready to play left. He's pretty much a right tackle. Good news is he shows you promise at the position, but then he suffers a pretty catastrophic knee injury, and you're not going to have him here for most of 2026, and certainly not, in the competition this year that is starting to line up. So you're running back a competition in which the ultimate winner, which didn't come until later in the season, isn't even in it. And you also told everybody how you thought about some of these guys when they were available in your playoff game. And you made a pretty drastic, surprising move to move Joe Thuney over to left tackle for that playoff game. Now, I can also understand the Bears talking themselves out of what I just said. Hey, it was a playoff game. We trust Joe Thuney. We thought Jordan McFadden, who most fans probably didn't even know was on the team for most of the year, was the best option at guard. And you go, you're trying to put the best five on the field regardless. But even if that's your argument, you're saying that Theo Bennett Theo Benedict and Braxton Jones were not among your best 5. And now you're saying this offseason, just probably based on the idea that he's healthy now, Braxton Jones is potentially part of your best 5. I understand why some fans are looking at this and a little bit confused, especially when somebody like Taylor Decker, who's played with, in Ben Johnson's system, played a lot of football in this league, is available right now.
I think one of the best ways to do this, to have this conversation, is probably how they did it behind the scenes. You're actually having, you're adding context to everyone's evaluation on this, and I think it's important context. Like Braxton Jones, he never looked healthy in training camp. I'm sorry. I know he probably felt pressed to come back because of his contract situation, new coach to win over, left tackle just drafted in the second round. He had a lot of reasons to push himself, but the atrophy in his leg was noticeable, even by us standing on the sideline.
He already has thin legs to begin with.
Yes, never looked like himself. Never looked like the reliable, consistent left tackle that he had been the past few years for the Bears. Karana Magaji, he was drafted with development in mind. They knew that. They knew he was a project, and he has never been healthy. But he's still a third-round pick. I don't think Ryan Poles, in particular, has ever given up on him. Theo Benedict kind of came out of nowhere. An undrafted guy signed by the previous regime who quickly won over Dan Rochar and Ben Johnson with what he could do in the run game. Immediately impressed him, had an outstanding training camp, became part of the conversation kind of out of nowhere just because what he was doing specifically in the run game that happened in training camp. Then Ozzie Chapillo. He played right tackle mostly at Boston College. Let's not forget that. I don't think anyone expected him to have immediate success at left tackle. I think the Bears actually told us, Dan Rochar, Ben Johnson, Ryan Poles, that this might take a little time for him to get used to things on the left side. We saw him struggle, go back to right tackle, and then come back to left tackle. So to me, it wasn't surprising that it ultimately started to look like it was going to work out, but then the injury obviously changed conversations. So now, fast forward to right now, Braxton Jones is healthy. I think Theo Benedict has a role as that jumbo tight end, that swing tackle. And I think Ozzie Chapillo, this is a player who was drafted in the second round just last year that the team is not giving up on.
So I could buy this situation, this left tackle situation, basically running back the competition from a year ago minus Ozzie Chapillo, if the Drew Dahlman thing hadn't happened. Because now you're also weaker at center. And I just can't. I think that's what's causing some of my uneasiness about the offensive line, which we saw last year how important that was for not only just changing the offense, but helping Caleb Williams in his development, take fewer sacks, run the ball better, give this team an identity of physicality, right? I think of all the moves that have been made, we just talked a lot about the defense, losing Tremaine Edmonds, Kevin Byard, like whatever. I have this uneasiness right now with the offensive line because on top of it, Joe Thuney's a year older. Jonah Jackson's a year older. Not that he's significantly old. And you stayed pretty healthy last year, until the Ozzie Chapillo injury happened. And that's no guarantee in any season. So I guess this is all leading up to me saying, I know they were looking at left tackles in the draft last year when the depth chart looked pretty similar, minus Ozzie Chapillo, right? Because they drafted him. They ended up drafting Ozzie Chapillo. But like Calvin Banks, if he's still on the board, I think that could have been the pick in the first round instead of Colson Loveland. So I just think that I'll just say us, on this show, we need to probably take tackles somewhat seriously, potentially even in the first round, if the right player falls at number 25, because I could see the Bears. I think they're definitely going to be looking at centers, maybe not in the first round, obviously, but tackle first round, I think is on the table.
All right. Do you want to talk about what happened at center in free agency? You want to take this break and then talk about it in the back end of the show?
Let's break first and then talk about what happened there because that was pretty wild. So yeah, we will run the correct break and thank our sponsors here and come back and hit the rest of what's on our rundown here as we review the first day of Bears free agency and introduce you guys to the new Bears 2026 version of Ben Johnson's squad. All that's coming up, but first.
Adam, what if you could have reliable and intelligent Wi-Fi? And what if I could, you could get it for the same price for 5 years? Sounds awesome, right?
Be good.
That's the Xfinity 5-year price guarantee. Imagine Wi-Fi that makes everything in your home work together, that finds and fixes problems before you even notice them. It's awesome. Super intelligent Wi-Fi with a sixth sense. And here's the best part, especially for me. It lets you stream the game even when your whole family's online, on the iPads, doing their own thing, playing Roblox. You know how it goes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these devices work in perfect harmony for 5 full years. And here's the best part. No annual contracts, no hidden fees, and Xfinity's best equipment included. So take it from me. A lot can change in 5 years. Championships are won. Records are broken. Dreams grow bigger. But your Wi-Fi, it should stay reliable, and the price should stay put. Lock in your price and unlock the possibilities with Xfinity. Learn more at Xfinity.com. Xfinity. Imagine that. Select plans only. Restrictions apply.
The weather's getting warmer, nicer. It was nice and sunny outside. I had to put my Shady Rays on. So that's the go-to, especially this time of year. If you're going on spring break, you're just getting ready to travel, whatever it is, Shady Rays changed the game, and you want to check them out because these sunglasses are made for real life, seriously good looking, polarized, durable, and not stupidly expensive. And if you're out there doing things, there's probably a decent chance sometimes your sunglasses get damaged. Maybe you lose them, get buried in the sand somewhere, fall off a boat. It's happened to all of us. But with Shady Rays, here's the wild part, because if you lose or break them, even on day one, they're going to send you a brand new pair. No guilt trip, just replacements. So now you can actually wear your sunglasses without fear on hikes, at concerts, on the boat, wherever. Shady Rays is eyewear that has your back. So go to shadyrays.com. Use code CHGOSR. CHGOSR for 40% off 2+ pairs of polarized sunglasses. So, John's one player we talked a lot about, and we kind of knew it was going to be, somewhat of a pipe dream. Certainly, if the Bears would have to move a lot of things around and mortgage the future. I don't know that any of us, and I don't know that anybody in the NFL, honestly, based on the reaction I was seeing out there from contract experts, people have been dialed in on free agency, and that's kind of all they've been doing. Thought Tyler Linderbaum would reset the center market the way he did. Pretty shocking.
$27 million per year. The previous high was $18 million for Creed Humphrey. $27 million. I'm not doing the math, but I know that's a big percentage increase.
Well, yeah, I'm just like, I guess for every player, that's why I always say this, the market is what the market is. If one team's offering this, you need to top that, then apparently it leads to that big of a jump. Usually when you see these contracts, so it's just like, okay, we'll pay them more than the previously high paid center. But I also think this is an indication of how good of a player Tyler Linderbaum is, and probably actually explains a little bit more of some, including myself. I was like I didn't realize at first the Ravens didn't give him the 5th-year option. That seemed like such a no-brainer. And then when you realize, they didn't give him the 5th-year option, they got their own financials and things like that. Now they realize how I think they just
probably right. Yeah.
They saw the future. And this is where I'll give you another name. And we kind of talked about this yesterday a little bit, that a similar thing could potentially happen is with Jalen Carter on the Eagles in the future. Like they've mortgaged their future so much that the price on these 5th-year options for, some of these first round picks, it's a lot of money, especially when they make Pro Bowls and they get that escalator put in there as well. puts you in a tough spot
Yeah.
if you're one of these teams that's kind of consistently in contention and are borrowing from the future. And so the Ravens had to make a tough decision. I don't know if the Ravens even thought it would be $27 million per year, though. So I guess good for the Raiders. It's a huge pickup. I don't know who wins the Tyler Linderbaum, Max Crosby trade, but probably the Raiders because they got the first round picks in return as well.
I mean, good for the Raiders, but great for Linderbaum. Like sometimes this is all just about timing and having the right market for whatever position you play, and having teams like the Raiders with ample cap space, a new head coach, an owner who's willing to try to buy his way out of trouble. They were busy on day one of free agency, and we know, the NFL knows, you cannot buy your way out of trouble, but obviously they're looking at taking Fernando Mendoza with the first pick. It makes sense if you're the Raiders to spend that money on the center position because we know what that means for a young quarterback. I appreciate the pivot to Garrett Bradbury. I really do. You got a center with a lot of experience. Is he perfect? No. Is he as good as Drew Dahlman? Probably not. But you know what? He's not awful. He's not awful. The advanced stats look good. Didn't give up any sacks last year. Could he be better in the run game? Yeah, maybe. Maybe Ben Johnson sees something that we're not seeing, and Dan Rochar is too. But to get a center in with that much of experience and just giving up a future day 3 pick, I appreciate the pivot move that Ryan Poles had to make to bring in some experience up front in the middle at the center position for Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I mean, look, giving this a few days to breathe and realizing what Linderbaum ended up getting, which I'm sure the Bears had a decent indication. Connor McGovern also re-signed with the Bills, which is notable in all this as well. You look at the options that were really out there. Cade Mays signed with the Lions. Otherwise, guys that are still available, I can give you now one interesting name that did pop up yesterday was Elgton Jenkins from the Packers. But he's been dealing with a lot of injuries, 31 years old. Bradley Bozeman, 32 years old. Ethan Posich, 31 years old. Graham Glasgow, 34 years old. I mean, a lot of just older players. And Garrett Bradbury, I think you're talking about a future 5th round pick, not even in this year's draft, and is a guy who fits schematically and has that connection to Joe Thuney. So when you really look at and lay out all the options, understanding that I don't think either of us will be surprised too if they try to draft a center for the future. And we've heard nothing but positive things about Luke Newman since they've drafted him. He was a former tackle, so he's got some athleticism. We know he's been working hard at center this offseason as well. Add another draft pick potentially, or maybe even don't. You could probably survive here with Garrett Bradbury for a year. So am I nervous about it? Do I think the Bears, are in a worse spot overall than when they paid for Drew Dahlman and they got exactly what they wanted out of Drew Dahlman and more? Yeah, I am. But you got to move forward. And the options that were available for you now that the dust has kind of settled a little bit at this position, the Garrett Bradbury move makes a lot of sense. And the Bears, credit Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson, Johnsy, because they traded for Thuney last year. They traded for Jonah Jackson. They traded for Bradbury. Now those other two worked out pretty well.
As I tell my children all the time, Adam, it could always be worse. and with the Chicago Bears, we know that very well too. It could always be worse. So I see the experience. I see the potential fit for the scheme that Ben Johnson wants to run, especially on the ground. This could work. The idea of Drew Dahlman retiring like post-draft, like I'm just keeping that in mind because that would have been an awful situation to deal with from a roster construction standpoint. It's impossible to fully replace what Drew Dahlman can do at that point. Now, at this point, I think you're like 90% there.
Yeah. All right. Any other final thoughts on Bradbury before we move on?
No. I think we got a quarterback situation to talk about here.
Yeah, but before we get to that, the comp picks were announced
Oh, I feel
yesterday.
like you got a rant here. Another rant?
Well, first of all,
My
let me
turn?
well, believe it or not, I'm going to applaud the NFL for something. Okay?
What?
I mean, it'll be a sarcastic applaud, trust me. But brilliant move to drop the comp picks out there in the middle of the first day of free agency, knowing that they were going to get blasted yet again for the Bears not getting the 2 third-round picks. And it is a national story. Like, it is something that, I mean, it's not fully national, but like, Florio.
Enough. Like Jonathan Jones is talking about it. Mike Garafolo is talking about it. Enough of a story, yes.
And the league I guarantee you this is going to be a topic at the owners' meetings in a few weeks. Because I think there's a lot of people in the NFL that want clarity on this and why the rule's written a certain way. Does the rule need to be adjusted? Is the rule even necessary? Are the intentions behind the rule? All these things need to be discussed, and I think they will be in a year that it doesn't seem like there's a lot of major issues outside of that that could be coming up here at the annual meeting in a couple weeks. If I have a rant on this, it's just this. Like, the thing that is so confusing to me is I don't know that I can remember another issue that has come up in the NFL or maybe even beyond. We live in a very polarizing society right now. Everybody wants to argue about everything. Everybody wants to take a stand on one side of whatever the issue is. I've never seen a more unanimous issue in my life. Like, is there a single person out there besides whoever's making this decision inside the league office that is saying, you know what? I think the NFL's right. The Bears shouldn't get those comp. Literally, nobody is out there saying that. I'm seeing Packer fans on Twitter that are like, yeah, I hate the Bears, but this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, they got screwed.
Like, it is one of the weirder things I've ever, like, the NFL could have just been yesterday, probably taken a nice little PR victory lap too. You know what? The Bears should get those picks. Take them. No one would have had an issue with it. There wouldn't have been a single person that was like, oh, I can't believe the NFL changed their mind on this. Nobody. It's been completely unanimous, except for some reason the NFL is like planting their flag in the ground. Nope. This is what the rule says. It is one of the weirder things I've ever seen, and completely unnecessary too.
I imagine that the discussions that happen starting later this month at the NFL owners meetings in Arizona, like those discussions lead to changes in the actual language of this rule, which is fine, which is great, which is probably needs to happen after a situation like this. But at the same time, like, can you imagine the Bears as they get closer and they're finalizing the draft board, like how different things would look if they had 2 additional third-round picks? This is a good draft for late day 2, or late day 1. I would be pissed. Like, if you're constructing your draft board and you're looking at things later this month, early April, leaving the NFL owners meetings, I would be enraged that I don't have those picks if I'm Ryan Poles, if I'm Jeff King. Like, you could use these picks to fill so many holes, to move around a little bit more in the draft. But now you're just left with what you have. I know you just got one for DJ Moore, but yeah, it seems like such a fixable situation that just wasn't fixed by the NFL.
So that's what I wanted to get to next, because it ties into everything we're talking about in this episode. Because what the Bears are essentially doing here is banking on drafting and developing, which is what smart organizations do. So yeah, they're going to go, you look at some of these moves. All right, they probably paid Coby Bryant a little bit more than they would have paid Kevin Byard, but they got younger at the position, and it was a spot where they had literally no other safety sign. Go out, make a little bit of a splash there. Not a cannonball, just a little bit of a splash. Same thing, Devin Bush. They got younger. They got cheaper at that position too, because they brought DeMarco Jackson back. They addressed 2 spots in that linebacker room, let Tremaine Edmonds go on, and he ended up getting more money, and he would have been paid more by the Bears. all of this, what this does, though, and as they try so hard to not borrow from the future as well, puts more emphasis on drafting and developing. That's how you get it. That's how you do this now. So, yeah, 2 third-round picks matter a lot. They matter a ton, and you're not getting those picks. So I imagine they're definitely pissed. They should be pissed. That pick would have slotted in at worst 101 because the NFL put the official draft order out this morning. Now that now that the comp picks have been announced, there was only 4 comp picks total. So those comp picks were 97, 98, 99, 100. The next one, if there was another one, would have been 101. And the Bears are picking at 89. They have 4 picks in the top 89. That would have given them 5 picks, basically in the top 100. That you do damage there.
Yes.
You get you another swing.
And that's what you want if you're trying to retool your roster the way the Bears are. So here are the official slots for the Bears 2026 draft picks as shared by you earlier. First round, 25th overall. Second round, 57. Second round, 60. That's the DJ Moore pick coming back on Wednesday. Third round, 89. And then the fourth round, 129. And their 2 7th-round picks are 239 and 241.
Yeah. Well, that was a little bit of a bummer for the Bears, but also not surprising based on how this whole thing has gone. Again, one of the weirder things. You just give them the comp picks, nobody blinks, nobody has an issue with it. Instead, this conversation keeps going and will continue at the end of the month in Arizona at the owners' meetings. All right, we need to end the show with our big takeaway. The big takeaway presented by Xfinity. Imagine that. Case Keenum signed to a contract extension yesterday. A little over $5 million over 2 years. He was on a 1-year deal originally, brought in to be the third quarterback, sort of the veteran voice in that room. Obviously, was a good fit. The Bears liked it. They gave him an extension, and it's a 2-year extension. What do you think this means, if anything, for Tyson Bagent?
So Tyson Bagent was like my first thought in this. Like, happy for Case Keenum. I know why he's on the roster. He's here to help Caleb Williams. He's here to help Ben Johnson. But at the same time, like, you couldn't help but wonder, like, okay, like, how much are the Bears being offered for Tyson Bagent at this point as the QB market settles down and QBs find new homes? Is he looking at? We just talked about draft picks. Could there be a second-round pick? Could there be an early third-round pick? Those would be something I would do if I'm the Chicago Bears if we're talking about trading Tyson Bagent. I know how important he is to the Bears. I do. But at the same time, if Caleb Williams is your quarterback, Tyson Bagent is going to want a place to play at some point. And if he likes the Arizona Cardinals, for example, I think you have to do right by your player and send him there. And you take their high third-round pick, too, in return.
Look, there was a small moment yesterday where I thought that there was maybe a connection there, because at that point the Cardinals hadn't given any indication that they were gonna, run it back with Jacoby Brissett. They also signed Gardner Minshew for like $8 million. It doesn't seem like right now that's the move that they're gonna make to bring in Tyson Bagent in there. And if they did, now it's like a competition. I don't know. If you really look at this Case Keenum contract, he's getting a $500,000 raise. There's incentives been in there if he has to play.
Incentives. Playoff incentives.
Yeah, I mean,
if that happens,
great.
Great, you're in the playoffs, but oh man, what happened?
Right. I imagine that that's something an agent asks for, and the Bears are like, all right, well, fine. I don't really plan on playing you, so sure, if we have to, we'll throw that in there. But really, this is a $500,000 raise for a guy that had some value for you, and so you're locking him in for everything gets tied back to Caleb Williams' contract. You're locking him in for the next 2 years of Caleb's development. If they hit it off, if that was good for your quarterback room, it's probably good for Tyson Bagent too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, that's all I think this is.
I think so. To fit the segment, like, my biggest takeaway and probably all of this, even after thinking about Tyson Bagent, is how much of a priority like Caleb Williams' development really is. Like they're just not saying, okay, 1 year was good enough for Case Keenum. Like that was it. He's got a great baseline to work with going forward. No, they want more of Case Keenum. They want more time spent between mentor and young quarterback and Caleb Williams, even if he's entering his third season.
So that was the big takeaway presented by Xfinity. Imagine that. Make sure you check out Xfinity, the 5-year price guarantee, always there available for you. All right, good hour here on the new free agent class. This week will continue to be fluid. I'm sure there'll be more moves, more things to talk about on Thursday. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
We have 3 super chats.
That's a good final thought or thoughts.
All right, I can read them for you. This is from Eric. Will Bush and Ben tear up the Green Bay logo together? Obviously, a reference of what Devin Bush did against Michigan State while playing for the Wolverines.
Do you think all this change impacts that rivalry at all?
What do you mean? I think the Bears just brought in a player in Devin Bush and another one in Coby Bryant who might actually enhance the rivalry a little bit.
Yeah, I also think you follow the lead of the head coach, and as long as Ben Johnson makes that a thing, it's a thing.
Yeah. So if Ben Johnson wants you to go tear up the logo out there, go ahead. The funny thing is that's what the Green Bay Packers tried to do like before the playoff game. Remember that? They tried gathering at center field.
Yeah. As they tried to pick on the specialists. And, I didn't see them going after any offensive linemen.
Taylor just wants to punt.
Yeah. It's a questionable move.
All right. From Cloudy Future, $5. How surprised are you that Nashawn Wright and Kevin Byard are still out there? Also reassure me that the Bears address pass rush soon or in the draft.
Well, it'll definitely be addressed in the draft, if not sooner. But I imagine it's both.
I'm not surprised by Wright's availability. The takeaways are outstanding. The Pro Bowl is a feel-good story for him. But at the same time, like his coverage stats weren't exactly all pro worthy.
No, he was getting beat quite a bit, and there were some penalties in there too. I still like him. I wouldn't give like a max, major contract for him out there. We'll see. Maybe he's still hanging around. The Bears bring him back.
I'm sure L. Harris. Let's get his name right here. L. Harris would love that. All right, one more from Cloudy Future, $10. How surprised are you that Tyler Linderbaum contract all that money not on offensive tackle but for center? Think I heard he leads all offensive linemen in annual average. Did I say that right? How do you think this impacts center O-line contracts in the future?
Well, I think in some ways this is a unique situation in that you rarely have a center that makes this big of an impact and be one that becomes available on the open market like that. It's a little bit that all added into it. I personally, and I've been talking about this for it feels like a decade now, really believe in building offensive lines inside out. I think the center position is insanely important. It's part of the reason why I'm sitting here nervous still that they lost Drew Dahlman. And still seeing what that contract is, I understand why the Bears weren't in on that. I also, if they had moved some things around and mortgaged future and went out and got him, I would have sat here on the show and defended it today, even at that price, because I do think he will make that big of an impact. So yeah, what it does in the future of the market, it'll be fascinating. But if it inflates a market, I think there's gonna be a lot of disappointed teams that pay other centers that are not that good a lot more money. That's where you get into trouble in free agency sometime. And that I think is a good way to end the show, actually, Johns, because I do think the one good thing you can say, even if you thought the Bears were going to do more and you want them to spend money on an edge rusher, you wanted Max Crosby, you wanted Linderbaum, you wanted all these nice shiny toys, I think some of that would certainly been defensible. The one thing you can sit here and say, though, is that at least the Bears, the way they went out shopping yesterday seemed to be very responsible.
Yes, very calculated. As far as Cloudy's question here, sometimes it's just the timing is important for this free agents. You had a team in the Raiders with the first overall pick, about to take a quarterback with ample salary cap space, a new head coach, and an owner who's willing to pay and pay and pay because of how bad they've been. You're right. Very calculated. I like the Coby Bryant move. I like the Devin Bush move. They're younger, faster on defense. I'm not sure how much better overall the Bears are. These are just, in a sense, replacements, but they're good replacements, ascending replacements. I really like the potential for Coby Bryant in the future. This is a player who is really coming into his own playing safety after entering the league playing cornerback.
Yeah. All right. Fun show. We are assuming that there will be some media availability at House Hall this week with the new players and Ryan Poles. There'll be a lot of questions. Obviously, Poles has not talked since even the Drew Dahlman retirement happened. So there'll be a lot to catch up on. We plan on having, assuming that we don't know when that is right now as we're doing this live. So, but assuming that happens before Thursday show, we will have that in our next episode. Regardless, we know there'll be more news and more things to talk about. So we'll have you covered on all of that later on in the week. Please hit that like button on the way out. Subscribe if you're here and new to the channel. Become a diehard. You can use code Jahns to get a good $36 deal. All of our written coverage up at allchgo.com.
And access to this sweet merch that we're wearing.
That's right. If you're a diehard, you get 20% off all Hoge Jahns merch and CHGO merch and All City merch. If you want to dabble with some of the other teams in our network as well, it's all there for you. If you're listening to the podcast, please rate and review. We appreciate each and every one of you for watching, listening, interacting with the show. Big week for the Chicago Bears. We'll be back later on in the week to recap all the other news, whatever happens. We're here for you on Hoge Jahns.
See ya.
We all silly like the mayor.